forgive me. We switched computer programs, and I can't make anything run anymore. My computer in my office is a joke. I haven't been able to use it for a week. All right. Unfortunately, for a Monday morning, you guys get to start out with probably one of the worst programs that you're going to get to see today or over the next 3 days. But it's one of those requirements.
We got to start.
Yeah.
We can only hire one of them.
Yeah, I actually heard that
Anyway.
the day that we
The
were
first
discussing
thing
that.
this setting together like this is going to have to stop. They're going to have to stop.
You would think as much time as they spend together, they wouldn't sit together in class. I'm just throwing it out there. As we go through this, you're going to see a little bit more about it. When I say selective, if you're in safety services, tag you're in. This all started over, if anybody remembers back in 2007, 2008, maybe a year before that, Amtrak. There was a train crash, and their union would not allow them to be tested. And that's what started this, and as things came about, the gentleman was stoned when he crashed the train, and it killed a number of people, unfortunately. So that's what started this. Safety services is the big thing. Everyone is subject to random drug testing in the city, but it's very selective until it comes to safety services, and then really we have no choices. And that goes with PD or fire and EMS. What we're going to do is we're going to go over it. It's very dry. It's very long. This is about probably an hour and a half, give or take, altogether. When we're all said and done, there's a page on the very back up that'll have each one of you sign and turn in. I think David's taking care of all the paperwork today, so he'll probably be tagged to make sure that all gets together. You'll also get to go over a couple other things today. Probably, are you doing the harassment?
They already did that one.
You already did that one?
Mm-hmm.
Already this morning?
They started
Wow,
at 7.
you guys are in. So you're really getting tagged this morning. I apologize. For those of you who have never met me, I'm Chief Steve Milliken. I've been chief here 2 years ago, November 1st. That's when I started here. I've been here since 1999. I came over during the merger. Shortly thereafter the merger, I worked for Trotwood Fire and Rescue. Before that, I worked for the metropolis of West Alexandria in EMS only. I still live there. I love small town. I love being in the city, but I love my small town to live in. I also worked at Good Samaritan's ER for 11 years as a paramedic on the trauma team for a long, long time. And it's, if you ever have the opportunity to do it, it's probably one of the greatest jobs in the world. You will learn more in a position like that than you will ever learn being a paramedic. And you get to do lots of really cool stuff from that side. So, we're going to get this started. Like I said, we're going to give an overview first, and then we're going to go back and we're going to do some other things, and it's a little more specific. So, with that in mind, the whole idea is to promote well-being and safety of all employees. Compliance, this was put in place in 1988. Like I said, in 2008 is when the city of Trotwood put this in place. There's an employee assistance program and plan also in place. We'll talk more about it. We're going to talk about a lot of terms. And when I say terms, we're going to talk about presumptive, we're going to talk about some presumptive things that happen with fire and EMS and police. We're going to talk about voluntary compliance. Voluntary compliance is a really interesting thing. If you get caught and then you say, oh, I've got a problem, it doesn't work that way. Voluntary compliance is going out and saying, like anything else, I've got a problem. We don't have a 12-step program here. Even though there's some days that back over the years we think that probably should have. But the idea is you say you got a problem beforehand, before you're caught violating it. Disclosure to the department director or HR, which would be me or Barb Brooks, who you probably not met yet, and you may never meet, just in passing. Barb Brooks is actually the HR director for the entire city. When you talk here in our department, probably Battalion Chief Hackey is the closest thing we have to an HR person. Rick handles all your paperwork as it floats through. So, but it's Barb Brooks or myself. Certain circumstances may involve a leave of absence. Obviously, if you say you've got a drug addiction problem, we're probably not going to have you on any of our trucks. Just, it's common sense stuff. And most of this you're going to see is very common sense stuff. And the conditions of treatment, follow-up, and discipline. We'll talk a lot about that. The affected employees, safety-sensitive employees, are random drug testing. And when I say random, I get a list, and I'll give you a little explanation how random it is. It's a third party that does it. We don't do anything with it. Everybody's name goes into a pool. They draw your name out. I can tell you, I've been tested 4 times. I was getting the complex after a while. I was the very first person tested in the city, and I sat on the committee that put this together. So as much as I complained at that time as union president, I think that's why I got tagged. I'm not joking. But I've been tested 4 times. There's been a couple other people that have been tested 4 times. We've had people that have never been tested. So it is exceedingly random. I get a list on a Monday morning, says these are the 3 or 4 people in this quarter that need to go. You will find out usually when you walk in the door for your next shift. The bad thing about it right now, I don't know how any of you are planning on working, if it's days, nights, evenings, weekends. We use, I'm going to call it Kettering's Workers Scare because I can't remember the name of it all of a sudden. But it's one of the Workers Scare places down Cincinnati Street and over in Huber. They only work like 7 to 5. So we're learning that this has some flaws in it. We make arrangements to get you there and get you there at the right time. If it's before shift, after shift, we will never call you in to be tested, if that makes sense. We will get you when you walk in the door. Nobody knows about it until that day, and then I let the battalion chiefs know. They hand it to you. You take one of our cars. You don't have to drive your own vehicle unless you're going to do it on your way home or on your way here. But you're done. It's right then. It's when you go. All other city employees fall under a different category. So a secretary in the utilities area, unless they show some signs of impairment, they are not subject to random drug testing, plain and simple. The police department is. Public Works has a whole different game. Those of you who hold a CDL license know how that goes. CDL requires an ODOT, or in our case, Department of Transportation, testing, and it's an entire different testing. They test a 6-panel test for CDL, plus you have to have a physical with them. I hold a Class A CDL, and I have to do a Department of Transportation physical every year, and I have to do their drug test, even though our test is more critical. We test 9 panels when we test it. Then we'll go over what we test. Drug program coordinator and responsibilities. Barb Brooks, again, is the coordinator for the city of Trotwood. I have nothing to do with it. Medical reserve, I can't read either. Medical review officer is a neutral third party, again, with, I'm going to call it Kettering's Workers Care, because for the life of me, I cannot think of the name of the company all of a sudden. What is it?
US Works.
I just can't remember.
No, US Works.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
And that gentleman or lady down there, the medical director down there, is the one that reviews all this. We have nothing to do with it whatsoever. And we're going to talk a little bit more about it when we get to this slide. It's a yes or a no question. Is it positive? Is it negative? And then it goes from there, if that makes sense. And we'll talk a lot more about that. Prohibited employee behavior. 0.04. Those of you who are well of the Ohio DUI license or rules, it's 0.08. Used to be 0.1. But 0.04. Use of alcohol and non-prescription drugs that affect job performance during the course of their duty. Performing safety-sensitive functions within a 4-hour period of using alcohol. I will tell you that for years, the old adage was, oh, you need to quit drinking at midnight before you come on duty. We started at 6 o'clock. That's 6 hours. That's okay on that 4-hour thing, but I can show you without any question in my mind, you will still have alcohol, and you will probably be over 0.04 if you stop at midnight. You're going to have to pardon me. We all have some type of creeping crud in here. We've shared it. I blamed it all on Battalion Chief Hackey. Bill now has it. We were just talking about it. He said, I think it's allergies, but he said, I cannot shake this. And I've been fighting this now for 3 weeks. I don't even feel bad. I just sound terrible. Use of alcohol post-accident under certain conditions. And this comes from the volunteer days of fire departments. A lot of people would go and have a drink after a fire, or go have a terrible, I had an accident, went and had a drink to calm these nerves. That's where that all came from. It's old time. You're probably never going to have the opportunity to go post-accident anymore. Refusing to submit Post-accident, random drug testing, reasonable suspicion, which we'll talk about. It's not just because I think you're acting funny. There's a certain set of rules that we have to play by. Return to duty, which is after something's went on, and follow-up testing. Possessing, using, or trafficking in illegal drugs or controlled substances. Don't make a meth lab in my parking lot. That's the best word I can explain to this. And we laugh about it. And one of the things that we talk about, and one of the things that we always are very critical about, if you're on a call and you're around a meth lab where they're cutting heroin, and I wish I could say this has never happened, but these things happen. We went into one house years ago that looked like a snowstorm had hit it. These guys were exposed, whether they wanted to be or not, just from the dermis, from the contact, from the inhalation, from all that stuff. So we noted that. So if they would have got if they would have got nailed for random drug testing, we at least had a record of it. You know, you're going to go in houses at times, and we don't see it as much anymore, but the smoke is heavy enough that you could cut it. You know, you need a flashlight to walk your way through where they've been smoking marijuana. We make notes of these things because we don't want anybody to be tested falsely and have a positive come up that really isn't truly positive. Misuse and abuse of prescription drugs. We're going to talk a lot about prescription drugs. I always enjoy reading this. The failure to notify the city within 5 days of a drug conviction. If you don't think we're probably going to hear about it within about 3 hours, you're kidding yourselves. Failure to notify the city of prescribed medicine that affect job performance. That's an important one. We'll come back to it in a second. Engaging off-job drug-related activity. Don't be caught going into crack houses. We had one happen years and years ago with one of our volunteer staff. He's no longer with us, to put it mildly. But he was caught, and they notified us that morning, and it was like, you know, this isn't even much of a discussion, especially in a volunteer position. But the notifying the city of prescribed medication that affects job performance. Firefighting is an inherently dangerous job from the standpoint of injuries. If anybody's been in this business very long, you probably had at least one surgery for something. I've got a $30,000 shoulder. That's my surgery, along with an ankle and a knee and a wrist and everything else. Everybody in here, you know, Battalion Chief Barnett, his was his knee. Battalion Chief Hackey tore his Achilles completely. Bill has had, I think, both his shoulders done. This is just, it's nature of the business, aches and pains. Everybody lives on Advil, Tylenol, and the other one is Vicodin. Vicodin is prescribed a lot. A lot of people take Vicodin, and it's not much more than a glorified Advil form. I don't take it anymore because I was that way. You know, I could take 2 Vicodin without a problem, and it doesn't affect you. What we're getting at is if you're taking something, Vicodin is a perfect example because a lot of people take it for pain. If you're taking something that you think it's going to affect you, it could be something as simple as a cold medication. Any of you have seen the NyQuil drunks or the NyQuil haze? We laugh about it, but I had a guy years ago, we were going on a fire and he had been sick all day. This was like 3 o'clock in the morning, he'd taken NyQuil before he went to bed. So you can imagine his stupor as he got up. He was in a NyQuil haze, as we called it. And I don't know how the Z-Quil works yet, but I'm sure it probably affects people the same way. But the whole idea is if you're taking something that you think is going to affect it, let your lieutenant know. We just don't want something to happen that you're injured, you're causing an accident, something happens that you're taking a medication. Doesn't mean it's not a legal prescribed medicine. We just want to be aware of it. But I don't care, and I always use the joke, and one of these days it's going to come back to bite me, probably on the videotape. If you're taking Valtrex, I don't want to know. It's la. But you know, the idea is it's a medication that's going to affect your performance is what we worry about. Rebuttable presumption. Most people have never heard of this. If you look around our buildings, every building has a little poster out in the hallway on the bulletin board. It says rebuttable presumption. It's really interesting. What it really means is if you're injured on the job and you test positive for alcohol or drugs, and that little thing that says not prescribed by a physician is even kind of a misnomer there. The burden of proof it falls on you at that point, that the drugs and alcohol did not cause you to get injured. So it's kind of a weird situation. Workman's comp will fight this tooth and nail. If you test positive, They will not pay if you're injured on the job, I'm telling you right now. It's happened in a lot of departments, knock on wood, it's never happened here. But it's one of those things, you're gonna have to prove it. You're gonna have to get the lawyer, and you're gonna have to go through all this mess to try to get them to pay for an injury on the job if you test positive. The not prescribed by a physician kind of goes back to that the slide right before this. Let us know. You know, that's not part of the rebuttable presumption if we know that you had this medication and you're taking it. If you've ever went for a random drug test, they don't care what you take, first off, but make sure you write it down. If you're prescribed Vicodin by Dr. Who, put down Vicodin by Dr. Who. If you're prescribed this, anything that's going to test positive, it's not a matter of it testing positive, they have to be able to explain why you're testing positive. And we will follow up on the doctors that prescribe it. Disciplinary action, cause for immediate removal from the workplace. Kind of goes without saying. Prohibited from performing any job-related function, and the employee is subject to a disciplinary action. Now, the severity depends on the action. When I say that, what you guys will get, and they should be out if they aren't out before this next 3 days, you're going to get an employee handbook. And what it's going to say is it's going to give you a whole list of what the discipline policies are, how they're handled. Everything is a step-by-step. To put it mildly, you really have to screw up to get to that suspension stage type or firing stage. But depending upon the circumstances, if you are under the influence of something and you go out here and you run a red light and you hit a carload of nuns, I'm probably going to skip a bunch of them. I have the right, and my lieutenants and battalion chiefs have the right to skip any amount based upon the offense. We never really have to do that, I'll be very honest. I've got a great group of people that work for me. I've been working with most of these folks for better than 20 years. There are certain expectations and certain things that we have expectations from our employees, and we're not disappointed, to be quite honest. But I have to bring it up. Again, may not follow progressive discipline. Termination may happen after the first offense. And I always use the carload of nuns because I've got Salem Heights up here. If you don't know anything about Salem Heights, here's a quick lesson about history of Trotwood. Salem Heights are the Sisters of the Precious Blood. Sisters of the Precious Blood are worldwide. If you remember the Dorothy Stang down in South America in the Amazon, in the rainforest, that was killed a few years ago, and they tried the rancher, put him in jail, now they're retrying him, it's all the same. Dorothy Stang was a member of the Sisters of the Precious Blood. When they retire, they come back here to live out their days. They just did a $5 million remodel on their place. It was made like old dormitories at school. If you've ever been to college, you'll know what I'm talking about, the little cubby holes. They're now what I consider luxury apartments, and very, very nice. And I don't mean that in a bad way, they're just very nice. First time they've been redone, I don't even know when, probably since history was built, and it's been there for years and years and years. If not terminated, you will have a mandatory referral to employee assistance program, and we'll talk a lot more about that. These are the things we test. Common stuff. Same stuff we do on all of them. Amphetamines, marijuana, cocaine, opiates. The big thing that you find nowadays are, if you're here in the Dayton area, you're going to learn everything about heroin. Heroin is like the most popular drug in the Dayton area because it costs between $15 and $20 here in Dayton, and it costs $50 every place else. So that's why you have all these transient people coming into town, and I say town, Dayton, buying it, and then they go to the outskirts, McDonald's on Salem Avenue, common place to find unconscious in the parking lot. I can tell you almost to the moment that new heroin comes into the Dayton area, because the McDonald's besides UD will have somebody unconscious in the bathroom or in the parking lot, and it's guaranteed 100% almost every time the next time a fresh batch of heroin comes in. My stomach's growling, you probably hear that on the tape. But heroin is rampant. It's beyond rampant. Marijuana is almost secondary to heroin anymore in the Dayton area. I can tell you that. Cocaine is everywhere. The thing that really doesn't talk much about is meth. Meth is rampant everywhere. I live in Preble County. If there's a barn that's off the road and hasn't been used, you may want to be careful because probably somebody's cooking in it. It's been every other week lately. They've arrested somebody for cooking meth in Preble County. It's becoming very, very common, unfortunately. We also check for benzos, barbiturates, methadone. Methadone is another really common drug right now. For those of you that don't work in the hospital business, methadone is one of the highest prescribed drugs for back pain. It's very common. When I started in this, if somebody was taking methadone, I figured they were a former heroin addict. Now it's a very common pain reliever, but it's very abused too. Talk about testing scenarios, and I'll go over this relatively quickly. You have to take a drug, or you take a drug test before you get hired. Must be taken within 24 hours of notification. Again, you're given the opportunity to explain or provide documentation on why you're taking something. And that goes across the board. Review will be conducted by the MRO or the medical resource officer. And if you fail it, you won't be considered for 1 year. Now, we were forced to put that in there, but I'm pretty much going to tell you, if you fail a pre-employment screening, chances are you're probably not going to get called back for that other one, even after a year. That's pretty much a big red flag all the way across the world. The random testing is, as I said earlier, limited safety sensitive. It's computer-based, and it's done by an outside contractor. That keeps us out of it altogether for a lot of different reasons. Upon notification, the employee must finish what you're doing, notify the supervisor of selection. The supervisor will be the one that tells you, because it's usually myself and the supervisor are the only two that know it. And report to the collection site. Failure to follow a policy will be considered a refusal, and the disciplinary action will start in. And we talked a little bit about that. You'll be given an opportunity to explain, provide documentation. The big one, the exposure to toxic substances, and our job, or the police officer's job, it's not that unusual. You get exposed, whether you like it or not. And that information will all be reviewed. Post-accident testing, we always talk about this, and again, this kind of stems back from the volunteer days, when they came from home. It's an unplanned, unexpected, or unintended event that occurs within the scope of employment. You probably didn't mean to run over the carload of nuts. I'm pretty sure none of my medics have planned on backing into a tree or a house. Long story. I'm still convinced that the house jumped out in front of her, but that's my opinion. But, you know, no one plans on having these accidents, and that's what we want to make sure. It's not like you went out and went running down the connector and ran every light on purpose to try to get there. We'll talk a little bit about red lights and stopping at red lights in a little bit. Another pet peeve. You must submit to testing if fatalities involved. It's common sense. It's not protecting me, it's protecting you guys. If you know anything about cities, cities have this wonderful thing that's called civil immunity, or sovereign immunity, I'm sorry, which basically says if a snowplow runs into your car, or a medic runs into your car, or I will give you the best example, an RTA bus hits anything, they'll plead sovereign immunity, which means they have no responsibility whatsoever. They won't pay a thing. But civilly, whoever was operating that vehicle is open for liability. It's a very odd situation. And I can tell you that from experience. We've had our medics hit by RTA buses 3 or 4 times. We've actually collected on 2. Only because the video camera in the bus was confiscated by the police officers. Thank you, Dayton, City of Dayton Police. Confiscated both times and showed that the bus was over the center line and hit our medics. Usually just takes the mirrors out, but like the mirrors on some of our big internationals are $800 mirrors because it rips everything out. But we've actually been able to collect twice, but that's very unusual because it is a government entity, the RTA is. It's a regional transit. If you receive a citation for a moving violation arising from the accident, if any injured party is removed, vehicle property damage is substantial enough, the supervisor's request. The reason that's on there is they wanted any damage to a vehicle or property, they wanted to send you to be tested when we put this together. My comment was, as at that time, union president, I back a police car into a post out here. $200 worth of damage. I back a fire truck into one of those posts, it's a couple $1,000 worth of damage. So you can't compare apples to apples. So we've given our battalion chiefs a reasonable span to say, you know, if you clip a pole, if you do these things, the threshold was, I think, at one time, $3,000. $3,000 if you take the simulators off the medics when you hit the curb at Good Sam, when you're turning in, is $3,000 by the time you ruin them all. So the numbers game doesn't play, it's substantial enough damage, and they've been, I can tell you, I've never sent anybody at this point for damaging the vehicle. We did have one of our engines was hit head-on a couple of years, well, it's been more than a couple of years, probably 7 years ago at an intersection. Traffic was all stopped. Unfortunately, the guy that was drinking in the Cadillac decided to go around all the stop traffic, hit the engine head-on, put it mildly, we tested all of them. The only reason they even treated the patients at the scene before they went to be checked at the hospital, but it's one of those required things. We're going to send you, we don't want open you to liability, neither myself, obviously. Must notify the city of Trotwood immediately if you're in an accident. The testing will be performed as soon as possible after the accident. Big things here. That's the compressor, keeps all the sprinklers charged on the dry system out there. Yeah, long story, a lot of money, and it continues to run. The alcohol and breath test can be done within 8 hours. The urine and drug test within 32 hours. Morning, sir. So we got a lot of time frame there, but you know, depending upon what the accident, what happened to you, if you're injured and in the hospital, it may be that long. The other big one is if it's done outside agency. In other words, if, I will tell you right now, the city of Trotwood will not investigate any accident with my trucks in. Our police department is hands off. We will call county or state patrol on any investigation. It just takes out the improprieties. It's a common sense thing. So what this really means is if the state patrol asks for a blood test or a breathalyzer, we're going to ask you to give us permission to get the results of that. Forget that, never flew. Based on job performance, conduct, and behavior, when we talk about reasonable suspicion, because some people are just goofy naturally. Some people are goofier than others on certain days of the week. Mondays are mine. I've been gone for 4 days and not sure I was happy to come back yet this morning. Still tired. It's based on a couple different things, and all our supervisors went through a class that caused them to spend days in class understanding what observable phenomena is. It's not, it has to do with the appearance, behavior, speech, body odor, physical symptoms of drug and alcohol abuse. Because if you normally come in with a freshly ironed shirt, preferably boots, well, mine are kind of polished today, boots polished, you know, you've got a belt on, you wear a wristwatch. I haven't worn a watch in years since the invention of the cell phone. But if you do all these things normally, and you walk in one morning and your shirt's untucked, it's wrinkled, looks like you've been sleeping in it, your clothes are dirty, you have body odor, your hair's messed up if you normally have it cut short. You know, it's the only reason mine's short, because when it's long, it's really curly. But all these things, there's a certain pattern that they look at. It's not just because you're acting goofy or you drop something or you trip over something. There's a certain series. It's just not they're going to go in and randomly say, you need to go for a drug test. The other side of it is a reported drug use by a reliable and credible source. The crackhead on the corner is probably not the reliable, credible source. But if one of my folks says, you know what, I saw such and such out in the parking lot doing such and such, obviously I'm going to be more concerned. Again, it's credible and reliable. The evidence that an employee has tampered with a drug or alcohol test during his or her employment. If you've ever been for a urine test at Kettering Workers Care or any of these things, some of them are worse than others. I thought I was going to be stripped naked the last time I went. I literally had to empty everything out of my pockets. I was waiting for him to make me strip naked before I went in. It wasn't even funny at a certain point. The water is blue in the toilet, so you can't get the water out of the toilet. The toilet is actually chained shut, which really bothered me. And they've got a little door that you pass everything through before you come out. Very bizarre, but you know, if you can tamper with it, you're pretty doggone good. That's all I'm gonna say. And if you're good enough to get through that, I'm probably not gonna catch you, to be quite honest, because these people are good. When they check, if you've ever looked at them, the ones I get back, when it talks about specific gravity, when it talks about temperature, it's taken right after you give the sample to match your body temperature, to match the specific gravity of urine and all this stuff. It's like, if you can cheat in this, you're pretty doggone good. That's all I'm gonna say. An arrest or conviction or involvement in a drug-related offense, we've talked about that a little bit. May also incident-based accident or unsafe work practices, but it must be more than a hunch. And I will tell you my story. I came from the business end of the world, not the government end of the world. I worked for a place called Independent Corporation for 20 years. I had a forklift operator who drove a dock one time. And, I mean, there's really no good reason. If there's not a truck there, there's probably a problem with you driving off a dock. Well, he was drunk as a skunk. But he was drinking vodka and nobody noticed him. But, you know, you've got to have some reasonable suspicion. It's not just random picking somebody out of alignment. If you are indeed found guilty of these offenses, before you can come back to work, you're going to be sent for evaluation treatment. The employee will submit prior to return to duty. You're subject to a follow-up for up to 60 months. And this is, to be quite honest, this is geared towards my full-time staff to a certain extent. And the cost of follow-up testing is at the expense of the employee. The cost for a test is like $35, if I remember right. That was one of the big arguments, and like I tell the full-time staff, you want to tell me that your job isn't worth $35? I mean, firefighting jobs are very hard to come by. They're very good jobs, they pay well, and that pretty much stopped that argument. The City of Trotwood offers EAP, and we will get those to you guys. I don't think they're in place in your packet. It's through our insurance company. It's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's confidential. You can receive 3 face-to-face professional consultations at no cost. When I say it's confidential, I'll never know about it. Talk a little bit about how these tests run. Now, this gets anybody that knows anything about spectrographs and all those really neat things. You're probably smarter than I am. We use only Department of Health, Human Services certified medical facilities. All their stuff is quantified as being able to be used for this. I love this breast testing device, saliva-based testing. All alcohol tests will be performed just prior to, during, or after duty. Collection of testing will confirm the methods and procedures of the testing facility and the results from the medical review officer within 24 hours of the testing procedure. And they will go to Ms. Brooks, not to me. This gets really intense. It's in your papers. The presence of drugs and any thing that we talked about back on Section 8 were all the things that we test, 9 panels. It's divided into 2 vials, primary and secondary. After the initial screening on the primary, if the test is positive, they'll reconfirm it with the secondary. Now, they won't I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. They will do it on the primary, and they will not reconfirm it on the secondary until later on, and we'll talk about that. Negative tests will be reported to the city. Positive test results will also be reported. The test results will be released to the City of Trotwood, kept confidential unless consent to release has been obtained. The individual is entitled to the test results upon a timely manner with the drug program coordinator, again, Ms. Brooks. All positive specimens shall be confirmed using gas. Yeah, I'm not even going to try to say it this morning. My tongue doesn't work yet. All records pertaining to a given specimen will be maintained by the laboratory for 2 years. All positive urine specimens shall be retained frozen for any retest for 1 year. Now, you're gonna be given the opportunity, like we said before, you're given that opportunity when you're there. It's not just like right this minute. Review of information documentation is only by the MRO and released to the employee only to explain the test. In other words, if your test tests positive for Vicodin and you are prescribed Vicodin, that's the end of it. It's a positive test, but it's an explained positive test. It's not a big deal. You may request a second vial to be tested in the event of a positive test on the first vial. So if you're found positive for something that you don't believe is supposed to be there, you can request that the second vial be tested. It'll be done within 72 hours and reported back here. Has to be in writing, signed and dated and submitted to the immediate supervisor. I will tell you, we've never ran into this, first off, but that would be the battalion chief is who you'd hand it to, and they would take it straight to bar, plain and simple. Supervisor must immediately forward, and it says within 24 hours, unless it's on a Saturday, it would be within the hour, literally. Retest at the expense of the employee unless it comes back negative. They'll maintain all the records for 2 years, all positive specimens retained frozen in storage for a year. To the extent required by law, and we always cover this because those of you who are not in, the bad thing about public service is everything is public record, except for your medical records. These are medical records. So the records pertaining to treatment, medical test results will be confidential unless one of you give us permission to release it. Medical records cannot be released. They are 100% confidential. They are literally a separate file in HR. They are not part of your personnel record. Believe it or not, that's the end of that one. Not terrible, but. Come on, work with me. This is the actual education part of this. It's a lot of facts and figures. You're not expected to remember any of them by any sense of the word. I couldn't remember them if I had to. We put this together with a company called Pinnacle. Pinnacle is a human resources company, and all the supervisor staff in the city have to go back each year and be recertified to be able to do this. That's why I'm doing this today. Hopefully once we put it on this video, nothing personal, but I'm never going to do this again. It's been a long, I've been doing this since 2008, and if David would even want to guess how many people we've hired since 2008, it's a lot. Again, really dry, folks. Some of it is the same stuff we talked about earlier. Rebuttable presumption, does everybody understand that? If you test positive, you're going to have to prove that it didn't cause your accident. That's the big one. And again, based on reasonable suspicion, reasonable cause, it's posted in every department or every place in this city. The whole idea, substance abuse places a major burden on all segments of American society, including the workplace. The education of encouraging employees to seek help, protect businesses from the negative impact of substance abuse. You will never hear that the UPS man was naked in the fountains high in Las Vegas. But I assure you, if it's a fireman, you will hear tomorrow morning's news, it will be the headline news. Obviously, we don't want that for our profession, we don't want that for our city, and we obviously don't want that for our employees. That's why it's such a negative impact. But you see it all the time. You know, you never hear about that, but when a police officer be in an accident, is drunk or drinking, let a firefighter, let a fire apparatus or a police car or a medic get involved in an accident, and nothing else matters. On the front page of the news, anybody saw, what was it? Thursday or Friday night, when Kettering had the...
Wednesday.
Wednesday, I couldn't remember what night it was. Yeah, had a medic, an engine, and a police car, all Had nothing to do with anything else. That's all they talked about, with all their apparatus. And actually, they were sitting still. So, alcohol and drug abuse continues to affect American society. An estimated 19.5 million Americans are currently illicit drug users. This was in 2008 when this slide was put together. 11% of the youth between 12 and 17 use illicit drugs. That always bothered me because at the time we put this together, my children were at that age. Nearly 1 out of every 4 high school seniors used illicit drugs during the past month. That's even more bothersome. Alcohol is most widely used. Any use, 50%, 119 million people. Binge using, and we'll talk about what constitutes binge using, 23%. Binge is drinking 5 or more drinks on the same occasion at least one day in the past 30 days. By occasion, it meant the same time or within a couple hours of each other. Firefighters and St. Patrick's Day are all binge drinkers during that time. Now, I know a lot of those folks that don't have another drink the rest of the year, but they definitely binge drink on St. Patrick's Day. Thank goodness and knock on wood, most of them take care of each other, and nobody's ever really done anything stupid during that time. But I can assure you, they definitely fall into the binge drinking on that day. And heavy use, 7%. Heavy alcohol use is 5 or more drinks on the same occasion on each of the 5 days in the past 30 days. All heavy alcohol drinkers are binge alcohol users. Common sense. This is kind of an interesting slide, but it shouldn't surprise anybody. The only thing that really surprises me here in Ohio, this is overall nationwide, but if you look at the 18 to 20-year-olds, that's quite a bit. I mean, because you can't even drink in Ohio at 18 to 20 years old. The 21 to 25 and college kids, I mean, both my daughters, one's a graduate of Ohio State, the other one is in Ohio State. Knock on wood, they're not drinkers, but, I mean, if you're ever on campus on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, you'll know exactly why that number is so high. And then it dwindles off, obviously, as the age increases. Driving under the influence, again, the 21 to 25-year-olds shouldn't be surprising. The 26 to 29-year-olds are invincible. And then we start getting a little better sense as we get older, and it decreases again. Illicit drug use, again, the 18 to 20-year-old is the one that probably bothers me the most personally. But when we talk about illicit drugs in the 18 to 20, it's probably, if you go nationwide, it's probably marijuana more than anything else. But we're seeing an influx of heroin. Again, in this area, heroin is just unbelievably rampant. And when I say this area, not Trombley, the entire Dayton region. It's ridiculous, to be quite honest. My employment status, it's quite interesting. You know, most of these folks are full-time employees. Makes it quite interesting on them out. Problem drinkers by industry. I leave this in here only because I find it interesting. Construction and mining, wholesale, retail, leisure and hospitality. I kind of thought that went hand in hand with drinking. Business and repair services, agriculture. I live in a farming community, and I can tell you a lot of farmers are binge drinkers, especially after harvest, when they have a chance to get away from the farm. Finance, real estate, manufacturing, government, professional. 62% of all U.S. companies are now testing. Positive results have been in decline for a year. Common sense. If you're going to be tested, you're probably not going to do it. But again, it's kind of like stoplight or red light cameras and speed cameras. It modifies behavior. It doesn't mean they're doing it less. It just means they aren't doing it during working hours. And that sounds really bad, but modifying behavior during that time and saving yourself from injury and money. Alcohol and other drugs affect the easy for me to say, profitability of a company. It also impacts safety and health of all the other employees. And the big thing about that is, when you look at that, 33 to 50% less productive, and they're absent 30 to 35 days per year. I can tell you will not be absent 30 to 35 days a year here, and you'll probably not be late more than 3 times. We got some very, very strict policies when it comes to our attendance. This isn't a job that somebody can just slide over and take your place. We have an expectation of people on trucks and being able to respond to a call. And there's days that these trucks are never here. And one person shy creates a mass problem in the mornings around here, or in the evenings for that matter. 3 to 4 times more likely to have an accident on the job, and 5 times more likely to file a workman's compensation claim, easy for me to say. 77% of all drug abusers are employed, and 21% of the workers report being injured or put in danger or having to redo work or cover for another employee, or needing to work harder due to others drinking. Factories are ridiculous this way. I will tell you, any of you that are old enough to remember the Camaro Firebird plant down by Cincinnati in Norwood, they had a guy that did nothing but sleep on a pile of cardboard until somebody needed to take a break or was drunk or didn't show up for work. And then he would get up, and he was called a utility worker. He would go do their job till somebody else came in, and then he'd go back and rest some more. I can tell you, my father was a plant manager of a very large manufacturing plant here in the Dayton area. His comment to me when I was young, he would have somebody come in drunk, he would fire them that morning, and they'd be back to work by noon because of unions. And it was before these type of policies were in place. They would cause thousands and thousands of dollars worth of damage during the time they were there, but they'd have them right back on the job, doing the same job within a couple hours. That's what we try to prevent now, and people get hurt. 40% of the time when a substance abuser causes an accident, a coworker's injured. That's abolishing. 15 to 17% of all employees in every U.S. company are substance abusers. That to me is still a tremendously high number. And a non-alcoholic member of an alcoholic's family use 10 times more sick leave than other employees because they cover for them. And we'll talk a little bit about it as I think on this one as we go back into it, on making excuses for somebody on the job too. Not a good thing. Recent Gallup survey showed that 32% of employees know drug use on the job, and 10% have been offered drugs to use on the job. I am 99.99999% sure that it's never happened here. Doesn't mean it isn't. But this is a very unique profession when it comes to that. You will hear about self-medicating paramedics and firefighters. We read about it all the time. We read about the suicide rates of firefighters and paramedics right now is exceedingly high. It's a national crisis in our business. And a lot of it is based upon stress of the job, self-medicating after your shift. And it's a very large study that's going on right now. Again, really busy slide, but when it talks about what the cost and consequences are, it's obviously your health, lower productivity, decision-making is impaired, increased accidents, low morale, increased theft, and tarnished image. As Lieutenant Downey will tell you, I am exceedingly proud of this department, and I take it very personally if we have even a ding in our badges. And we have a very good image. This department is I will say, one of the better departments around. I will tell you it's definitely one of the busier departments around. If you look at the numbers, obviously Dayton is number one. The joint Miami Valley Fire District down south, when Miamisburg and Miami Township merged, is number 2. Us and Harrison run 3 and 4 at any given time. The idea of us being tarnished over somebody's drug abuse, an accident, somebody doing something stupid, the consequences will be very swift, let's put it that way. And we're very good at keeping our noses clean here. Ways that people use alcohol and drugs, experimentation, it goes back to the young kids, they experiment. Social and recreational. A lot of people go out and have a social drink, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm a social drinker. My drinking consists of usually 1 drink a month, maybe. I think I had it over the weekend, and I admit I drink Mike's Hard Lemonade. It's good, I'm sorry. And other people use it as a stress reliever. Like I said, self-medication has become a very big issue in this business right now. Using a substance to modify or control mood, state of mind, or manner is illegal or harmful to oneself or others. Potential consequences of the abuse include accidents or injuries. We talked about that. Blackouts. Sort of speaks for itself. Legal problems, trust me, in this business, a DUI will sink your career immediately. Or a drug conviction. It doesn't matter which way it goes. Poor job performance, family problems, sexual behavior that increases the risk of HIV. An addiction is an irresistible compulsion to use alcohol or other drugs despite the adverse consequences. Repeated tries not to use, but you fail, especially if you're doing it on your own. And increased tolerance and increased disruption in the family. For 1 in 10 people, abuse leads to addiction. Addiction to alcohol and other drugs is chronic. It's not something that just is an acute problem that popped up yesterday. It's a long building process. It's progressive. It becomes primary. It is terminal. There is no insight on. I can tell you, it's you might as well relate it to cigarette smoking. Any of those of you who smoke, I quit for 10 years. I'm not proud to say I went back to smoking after 10 years, after being quit. It's something that has to be nurtured, taken care of, outside sources, and when I say that, alcohol and drug abuse is not something people kick on their own, contrary to television shows where they're going cold turkey in the room and shaking and having hallucinations. It doesn't work that way in real life. And it's characterized by denial. I've yet to meet anybody that's a chronic alcoholic or a drug abuse person that says, yep, that's me, unless at times some of our patients will tell you that, yeah, I use every day. It's family disease because it does affect everyone in your family, whether you think it does or not, in some way, shape, or form, whether it's the money that you spend on it, the actions that you do with your family, or the lack of actions that you take with your family, prior abuse of alcohol and other drugs, and other contributing factors. If you read this, how alcoholics and drug abuse and addiction and the recovery, you have to hit a certain level and come back up. You absolutely can't read this slide. Even when we put it together, it was hard to read on the normal thing. But it just talks about they have to hit a certain low before they ever come back up. As we talked about this a little bit, persons age 12 or older, marijuana number one, cocaine, pain relievers, tranquilizers, stimulants. I will assure you that heroin in this area is above some of those other things by a long ways. Inhalants, we haven't seen a lot of in the last couple of years. We used to have a gentleman here in town that I could tell you how much money he had because he would have either silver or gold paint, depending on how much money he had. The gold was much better than the silver because of what's in the gold. He lived for a lot of years, right up till they found him dead. I mean, literally. PAM, household PAM spray, is one of the most abused. Right now, the biggie is the computer dusting stuff. Big deal. If you pay attention to the news in Middletown, about 2 months ago, a guy was huffing the computer cleaner, or the keyboard cleaner, and hit a lady and killed an older lady at an intersection. They found it still in the car. Out in Preble County, we just had 3 kids out of the southern end of the county that bought it in Middletown and huffed it all the way back up till they sideswiped the car and some other things, and then they got caught too. But unfortunately, that part's pretty, it's not like it used to be, but it still is. The big things we see are Xanax, obviously. It's all over. The heroin we see. You really don't see, or let me put it this way, I haven't observed LSD or anything like that in a long time. Actually, I don't really even recall the last time I saw LSD in this area. Stimulants, yeah. Horse tranquilizers, my way, definitely. Further you get out in the country where it's more prevalent. Pain relievers, again, that's the hydrocodone. If you keep track of the news at all, you know it's rampant in Ohio too. The pill mills are ridiculous. And if you saw in the last 2 weeks, they're pretty much you're gonna see them disappear, I think. That and Vicodin both. I think you're gonna see them go away. Cocaine is prevalent regardless whether it's crack. And, we don't even talk about meth, which is very prevalent. The emotional effects of substance abuse. Aggression, burnout, anxiety, depression, paranoia, and denial. Paranoia, you got bugs on you. You'll meet them, trust me. They're all there. The slow reaction time, impaired coordination, slow or slurred speech, irrationality, excessive talking, ability to can't sit still. That's me every day. Limited attention span and poor motivation. This kind of goes hand in hand with that part of it that I talked about, that there has to be some really credible reasoning. You have to observe some things. All these are observed that would make you think there's something else going on, especially someone who's sedentary or isn't wound up all the time, that can't sit still, those type of things. Weight loss, sweating, chills, and the smell of alcohol. Goes without saying. Weight loss, we'll see. Enabling. When we talk about family and coworkers, when we talk about the effects on families, it probably is heavy on the families anyway. And if someone takes, the action that you take to protect a person from a problem, the consequences of her action. Unfortunately, enabling actually helps the person not to deal with the problem. And this can go from a family member, it can be from a coworker, kind of goes back to the people that have to redo work to cover for somebody, or, they, in these bigger factories, they tell them to go sit in the corner, we'll take care of this till you sober up, or, whatever the case may be. But the family that says that the father doesn't have a alcohol problem, he calls in sick for him, or the mother for that matter, it doesn't matter, or the parents that do it. We cover up, we rationalized, well, they had a bad time. They withdraw, avoid it, when you start going to talk about it, Bob's always been drinking like that, nothing new. They blame it on this, that, and the other, whether it's loss of job, loss of friends, death of a loved one, whatever the case may be. In our business, bad call. We've all heard it. It's all controlling, and they threaten. If you tell, I'm going to do this, especially when it comes to husband and wife. If you say anything, I'll leave you. It's very powerful. We feel sympathy for them, we make excuses for them, we apologize for them. Whether they don't show up at family get-togethers, or whatever the case may be, or business get-togethers. The anger, the pity, the tears, all these things that they're going to do to try to avoid the actual problem. Things to remember: difficulty performing on job can sometimes be caused by unrecognized personal problems, including addiction, alcohol, and other drugs. Help is available. Although a supervisor may suspect that an employee's performance is poor because of an underlying personal problem, it's up to the employee to decide whether or not that's the case. I can't force you. You may be the model employee, you may have some problems outside here. And I'm not targeting that to anybody, but it's happened in places. I've known people that are outstanding in business, perform at the highest level, and they drink from the minute they go off the job until it's time to come to work the next day. They've got a problem, there's no question about it. It may not be affecting their performance in their job, but I guarantee you it affects their family life. It's an employee's responsibility to decide whether or not to seek help. Addiction is treatable or reversible. An employee's decision to seek help is a private one and will not be made public. Again, it goes back to that medical records thing. Those are off limits to the media. Everything else in your life is open once you start working here, especially in the government sector. But not that. Reasons people don't go: they're not ready, cost, the stigma of being labeled as a former addict or former alcoholic. Again, thought they could fix themselves. Access barriers. Didn't know where to go. In today's day and age, that's almost the most lame excuse. Treatment wouldn't help and didn't have time. Excuse me. Locations in the past year where substance treatment was received. Again, self-help groups, outpatient rehab, inpatient rehab, mental health, hospital inpatient, private doctor's office, emergency room, prison or jail. It's pretty easy to stop drinking when you get to jail. EAP is an employee assistance program, can help people make a decision on what they need to do, decide what to do if someone, his or her family, they are confidential. We will never know other than somebody visited them. We have no clue and never will why they went to visit them. And that's the way it's designed to be. They're separate from personnel records, can be accessed only with signed release from the employee. They're bound by code of ethics to protect confidentiality of employees and family members, but there are some very clear limits of when and what, and with whom. Problems will not be made public. Conversations with them or referral agents are private. All information related to performance issues will be maintained in his or her personnel file. And that's one very distinct thing. It may not talk about you being treated for something, but your performance appraisals or your performance write-ups or whatever the case may be are part of your record and are accessed. Information about referral treatment, however, will be kept separately. The only thing, and I'm trying to see where it's coming to, information about treatment for addiction and mental illness is not a matter of public record, cannot be shared without, again, a release. If somebody else finds out, it's because you told them, it's not us. That's what it amounts to. If an employee chooses to tell coworkers, it's their choice. And if you tell a supervisor something in confidence, they're obligated not to disclose that, even to me. Some things that they have to tell us though. If child abuse, elder abuse, threats of homicide or suicide, we really appreciate knowing that. If somebody's going to come into my office and plan on shooting me, I'd really like to know in advance. I'm going to take the day off. Reporting participation with the EAP to a referring supervisor and reporting the results of the assessment evaluation following a positive drug test. Those things are not confidential. Verifying medical information to authorize time or satisfy fitness for duty concerns, revealing medical information to an insurance company to qualify for coverage. We've talked about all of these. That's the end of that. In a nutshell, very honestly, this is nothing different than most of the government anymore. And again, you may never in your career here ever be tested. And you may get tested 2 times in a row because it is so random. That's the one thing I will say, the fact that I've gotten so many times, I guarantee you it is random because I've got guys that have been here 20 years and have never went. And it's just funny how it works, but it's a good program. I can tell you that with police and fire in the city of Trotwood, we have never had a positive test, period. It's been going on since 2008. It's a pretty doggone good record. Better than a lot of departments and that I can name can say. So it's really important. The idea behind it is important. It's mainly it's to protect you guys. I don't want you on a truck with somebody that's been under the influence or having some problems, or I don't want you on a fire scene. You know, we depend on each other very strongly. We don't want anybody hurt. And this is a great team atmosphere, and that's what we want it to remain. And we want everybody to remain safe and enjoy a long career in this business because it's one of the greatest businesses in the world. Like I said, I changed at 40 years old. I did it part-time for years and never thought I'd want to change to do this. Kind of glad I did. It's a lot of fun. Whole different world. So, with that, the only thing I need is that paper at the very back of one of those packets signed.